Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks to Daily Maverick for inviting me to moderate this session. I may introduce you to our two panelists or debaters. On my left, Professor Mark Swilling from the University of Stellenbosch, also, I believe, Director of the DBSA, Development Bank of Southern Africa. And on my right, Adil Nchabeleng. Adil is the head of Transform RSA. And just a little bit of background, I first got to know Adil on a WhatsApp group.
Amazing.
It's the way of the world, a meeting these days. And we had many long and very entertaining and sometimes very serious energy discussions on that WhatsApp group. And it's wonderful to meet you in person today. Thank you for joining us, Adil.
Thank you.
And Mark Swilling. I met Mark, maybe it was about 6 months ago or a year ago when I invited him to speak on a panel discussion that we had at Nedbank on the energy transition, the just energy transition. And he spoke along with several other esteemed speakers on that panel discussion, and it was really very enlightening, and I learned a lot from that. So thanks. And welcome to this. Now, we're going to have a debate. This is a debate. It's not a panel discussion per se. And debates, by their nature, are supposed to be educational and confrontational and also entertaining. So I'm going to ask our two debaters to keep that in mind, to really entertain us as they educate us about energy issues. And today the subject of the debate is atoms or photons? Question mark. Now the subtext to that is probably nuclear or renewables. Which is the way to a clean energy future? That's the kind of subtext to the title, atoms or photons. Photons being carriers of light, energy that's carried by light, and atoms, of course, are a nuclear power. So for me, what's interesting, of course, is they're actually both generated from nuclear power. Nuclear, the sun is a nuclear reaction. It generates energy, which we can now harvest in South Africa. From somewhere millions and millions of miles away, there is a nuclear fusion reactor, the sun. And we've been trying to do nuclear fusion in the world today on Earth for many years, but it's still a dream. We haven't perfected nuclear fusion as a source of energy, but we've had it for millions and millions of years from the sun, which is a huge nuclear fusion reaction. But what we do have here is a nuclear fission reactor, which we can build here. Not a million miles away, but here in our backyard. But God, not in my backyard, please. Anywhere but my backyard. But it can be built here. You have one just up the west coast here, right next to you. So, of course, there's the question of clean energy. What is the way to a clean energy future? And I think you should be very happy in Cape Town that you live in such a pristine, beautiful environment with a nuclear power station just up the road. And you should be very happy that you don't live in Mpumalanga, where there is devastation, environmental devastation caused by coal. So, yes, there's a lot of debate. What is the clean energy future? Is nuclear clean? Is it safe? Is solar power clean and safe? It's not so clear as you might think. And I also want to say that I don't know if you've noticed in South Africa, but there's a kind of a narrative developing. I find it a bit of a disturbing narrative. But the narrative is sort of that there is locally manufactured, clean coal and nuclear with a black face. And there is foreign imported renewable energy with a white face. And one is good and one is bad. That's a sort of a narrative that is out there, that is developing. I find it a very disturbing narrative because it's not so simple. And I would like to debate these issues. Are we talking black nuclear, black coal versus white renewables, local versus imported, jobs versus no jobs? And we also, this world that we live in, as we've heard from the previous panel discussion, is characterized by, there's huge amounts of irrationality in the arguments, and it's very hard to distinguish truth from fiction, fake from authentic. And who do you believe? Well, today we've got two debaters who I think are going to present very different sides to the coin. And it's not for me, the moderator, to tell you what to believe or what not to believe, what is rational and what is irrational, what is truth, what is fiction, what is fake news or not. It's you. You're going to listen to it. And you are not stupid. You are able to distinguish between propaganda and truth. And you're going to listen to the debate. And we're going to see which way the wind blows, as say. But before we even start, I just want to get a view from this audience here today, right now, before we start the debate. Nuclear versus renewables. Who would say you're kind of on the nuclear end of the scale? Can you just put up your hand so we kind of see how many nuclear people are there out there? And can you put up your hand if you're on the renewable side of the scale? Okay, kind of, we get the picture about this audience. So this is not a neutral audience. No audience is ever neutral, and you are not neutral. But we're going to let them talk, and let them argue, and let's debate, and then we'll do the same question afterwards, just to see if there's been any change as a result of this debate. So I'm going to kick off and ask Mark for 5 minutes to give us his view on this idea of atoms versus photons. Then I'm going to ask Adil to do the same for about 5 minutes. And then we're going to have a kind of a open fire away between us, and I'm going to hopefully stimulate the discussion by asking some probing questions of our two debaters, and then they will wrap up each for 5 minutes. So Mark's going to start, then Adil, and afterwards Adil's going to start and Mark's going to wrap up. Is that fair?
Perfect.
You happy? Okay, fine. So Mark, over to you. You've got the floor for the next 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, Chris. It's well known that South Africa is the most coal-dependent industrial economy in the world. As a very, very small country, we are in the top 20 in terms of CO2 emissions. According to the World Economic Forum's Energy Readiness Index, which rates 115 countries in terms of their readiness, number one being the most ready, we rate 114th. Only Haiti is less ready than us, according to this index. And what this really refers to is the fact that there's a global energy transition underway in the world. Total investment in renewables now is about 300 billion per annum, and that's double investments in coal and nuclear combined. We also know, since the publication of the Integrated Resource Plan at the end of last year, that we are about to embark on one of the most significant coal power decommissioning programs in the world. So that Integrated Resource Plan basically lays out the need to face the fact that by 2041, all our coal-fired power stations have to be decommissioned, bar two. And you know which those are, Medupi and Kusile, assuming we can finish them. So the real question then is, what replaces our coal-fired power? So if you want to build more coal-fired power stations, you need people to invest in those. And as you probably all know, the biggest investors in the world in the last 2.5 years have announced their withdrawal from investments in coal. It's highly unlikely that we're going to find the kind of investors that which are appropriate for a democracy to invest in new coal-fired power. So the alternatives are indeed renewables and nuclear. But I prefer to avoid the religious debate about nuclear. No, it's very weird. My students and many audiences where I talk, they'll ask me a question which goes like this: do you believe in nuclear? I've never understood. I mean, you can believe in God and the tooth fairy, but you can't believe in a technology. What matters is the cash, the money. And the last 6 years, I've been on the board of the Development Bank of Southern Africa, and I've learned what it means to make decisions about large-scale investments in infrastructure. So really what matters is the money. So the average price of renewables has dropped about 90% over the last decade. And on the conservative side, the price in South Africa now is around 60 cents per kilowatt hour. And some IBPs are even talking about as low as 35 cents in the next round. Coal is about R1.30 kilowatt hour, and according to the, let me get it right. There's a report on nuclear, I've just haven't got the name, which basically says that nuclear on average is between R1.70 and R2.90 a kilowatt hour internationally across the board. So the ANC policy, as well as, at least rhetorically, the IRP, refers to lowest cost. And it makes sense that if we want to be part of the energy transition, which we have to, because we have to close our coal-fired power stations, we have to also have the most reliable energy, the cheapest energy, the energy that can be built as in the quickest possible way. And when you follow the money, it's basically renewables. I think just I also want to just address the question of the narrative out there about nuclear and coal is black and renewables is foreign and white.
30 seconds.
And this is a narrative which is really promoted most heavily by the South African Energy Forum. And the South African Energy Forum was established in July 2018 by Transform RSA, of which Adil is the president of. And so we really need to ask questions, Adil, about what your involvement is in the South African Energy Forum, which includes as one of its directors, Derek Zakele, who is a business development manager for Rosatom. And the South African Energy Forum has promoted, in my view, a toxic atmosphere, rubbishing the Minister of Public Enterprises, the new CEO of Eskom, Eskom itself, as well as a whole pile of processes and ideas that have come up to address our very serious energy challenges. And my only question is this the way to conduct discussion in South Africa? In many ways, what the South African Energy Forum does for the renewables lobby is it massively reinforces the renewables lobby, because South Africans know that if people want to conduct their debate in a toxic way, then there must be something wrong.
Mark, can we stop at that point? I have extended that a little bit beyond the 5 minutes.
Okay.
But we're going to have plenty of time to explore these matters further.
Yeah.
Adil, you've got the floor. You can respond. You can make your own arguments.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think to the distinguished panel, the guests as well as the participants, and everybody who actually took time today to come and listen to this most incredible topic in the evolution of our democracy. 25 years is actually what paints the entire picture. South Africa came into being as a new democracy over the last 25 years, and in that 25 years, we've had to literally experiment, and now we're literally getting to a point of getting to understand. You know, it's been like a baby crawling. the energy sector has been the bedrock of it. We inherited an incredible infrastructure coming out of the apartheid era, and that infrastructure has dilapidated to the point where there is not even much available electricity. The crisis of load shedding is as a result of the neglect and the non-maintenance and the literally, delinquent behavior around managing the energy resources which we have. In a South African context, we talk energy from a total holistic perspective. We're one of the most incredible single country that inherited one single resource, which was coal. And then when the 1960s happened, where the Americans experimented with atoms as well as photons, they went into the nuclear space, and we were the partner within the nuclear industry sector. We produced the fuel in South Africa, which was an engineering feat at the time. And we were able to actually partner with the Americans, and they created what eventually happened up to become the Hiroshima bomb. So it is that kind of a leap which people tend to forget the historical context. Why I'm saying it is so that we can put things into perspective. It didn't just happen that South Africa had a coal industry and had a minerals resources basin as well as a mineral resources complex, which propelled what was enjoyed during the progressive growth and as well as explosion of what apartheid enjoyed in terms of industrialization, major large-scale build, as well as the amount of power stations which were developed. And it's true that the definition of coal is black. The main workers in the coal industry and industrialization are black. We cannot run away from it. This is unfortunately, the property of what South Africa is about. And the hierarchy going up to the top of that industrialization happens to be white. That is why whenever new introduced technology, when we speak about renewables, it's a technological leap that is coming in to influence and add in within the energy resources. But the debate gets misled. We still are sitting on, about 87% of South Africa's energy generation still dependent on coal. Getting away from coal would mean the South African electricity entire grid will collapse overnight. So the fancy lifestyles that you're all enjoying, the lovely cappuccinos, the conveniences of putting on a light when you wake up in the middle of the night, going to a lounge or bathroom, will not be there. The houses, the materials, the lifestyle in terms of the cars we enjoy would not exist. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that we inherited a resource which was substantially cheap at the time, and still continues to be cheaper, by the way, which is coal. We're generating, Marx says that the current cost of coal is about 130. That's a debatable view and an opinion. It's not a fact. The cost of coal generation is about 33 cents on power plants. We can talk the fundamentals on a later level. But getting back to the element and the essence of it, we're talking about atoms and photons, and based on that, we're looking at what actually produces the most required energy. By no doubt, nuclear as a renewable energy source, and I know a lot of renewables people do not want to embrace nuclear as a renewables. It is a renewables. It is the cleanest by far, farther than solar, further than wind, and it will be providing, according to even data and stats, nuclear by 2050 will be comprising of over 50% of the global energy sources. This is a fact, and this is a developing fact. As you have seen, the investment by people like Bill Gates into the nuclear, modular reactor technology, which we started off in South Africa under the PBMR environment. So I think the fundamentals must be cleared. There is no contest over energy sources. There is a contest of making energy competitive, making energy cost efficient, and making energy a cleaner environment. That is a contest we should be going into. And talking about energy sources where we include all the multiple sources, be it renewables or baseload. Baseload simply meaning coal, gas, as well as nuclear and hydro as part of the baseload grid proposition, which is your baseline, which provides you the basics. You come to the renewable side of it, where we are talking about variable energy. Variable energy resources are simply clear on the basis that they provide you energy based on the availability and the proximity of dispatchability. Meaning that if you have an environment like your home, you want to invest in your own off-grid solution. Of course.
Adil, I think, sorry to interrupt you there, but you've had your 6 minutes, same as Mark. And I think we've got off to an exciting start.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not the end. But I want to now put a question to both of you to talk to just for 1 minute each. And that is the Integrated Resource Plan for Electricity. This is our country plan. And it was published in November. And the ministerial determinations for the new build have been submitted to the regulator. And we expect them to be gazetted in the Government Gazette in the next month or 2 or 3. Hopefully sooner than later, because we have an energy shortage. And the sooner we get moving, the better. But if you look at this IRP, this is the official country plan of the Republic of South Africa in the years between now and 2030. And it's absolutely clear that the plan is dominated by renewable energy, both utility scale and self-generation, as well, that is wind and solar PV, plus gas and battery storage. That's it. Nuclear, there is zero. There's nothing, no new nuclear to 2030, and coal is minus 9,500 megawatts. 9,500 megawatts coming off the grid. So that is the national plan. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'd like to ask our panel, is it right or wrong? But can I start off with you, Adil? Can you talk to this IRP? Because it presents the least cost plan going ahead to 2030, and nuclear doesn't exist in the plan. Can you talk to that?
Well, there must be a correction. Nuclear exists in the plan. The only issue and fundamental around nuclear is it will kick in as an energy source where it is now dispatched into the grid by 2030. The plan says there should be about 2,000 odd of nuclear introduction on top of what we have on Quebec.
The plan is for, if you look at the plan, table 5 is 1,850 megawatts.
Thank you.
But that's not new nuclear, that's Kubo. Nothing new.
Yeah,
Nothing
it's an
new.
extension. So it's new nuclear.
It's a life extension.
Yeah. So on those bases is nuclear. If South Africa had brain technocrats, right now we are ruled by politocrats who really don't much understand the fundamentals of energy. If you had really brainy technocrats who understand the future, you should be building right now as we're speaking major nuclear build programs. It takes a cycle of 10 years. By then you'll be ready. You'll have an 80-year energy life source, clean, non-emissions, and as you know, it's the best by far in terms of reliability and its base load. So just to correct the myth, the idea around the contest of these energy sources, I totally disagree with the fact that we should be fighting over nuclear and renewables and making a contest over nuclear renewables as well as coal, as if we are not the absolute beneficiaries. Energy is energy.
Okay.
And it should be promoted on those bases.
Okay, let's hear what Mark has to say. Mark? 1 minute.
Yeah, energy is energy, but what matters is the money and how much it costs. So in my view, the IRP is in the right direction. It should be extended to 2050. We should take out INGA. We should take out the caps on renewables. And we should accept that there will be no new coal. So there is 1,500 megawatts of coal in the IRP. That's never going to happen. Thank you.
Just in addition, Chris,
sure.
we actually proposed by what Mark was saying through the South African Energy Forum. Look, we sponsored the creation of the South African Energy Forum. I don't run the South African Energy Forum. I'm not involved at key decision making. We gave a sponsor to it to be created so that there is a forum in the industry that advocates and speaks on behalf of the energy sector. And it's an open forum. Everybody and all organizations who are currently affiliated to it are enjoying the value of it. So, that one part I needed to clear. Secondary to it is the IRP, the concept document that informed, by the way, the current IRP as it stands. Most of that contribution came from the South African Energy Forum, by the way. Because that adopted IRP, if you look at the submission South African Energy Forum did, including the BBC, including organizations like BIPA, that were South African black engineering professionals, contributed towards creating that platform, gave the opportunity for a significant amount of renewables to exist. So some of the myths we must literally take out, because we were the co-authors of that particular IRP.
Okay,
And the cutting down of coal, because we said that for the industry, because of the projections we know are coming, coal is going to in any way taper down due to global investment.
I'm glad that the South African Energy Forum has, in fact, as you've so eloquently said, reduced coal in the IRP. If that is the contribution of the SAEF, then I think we should be grateful, because we're not here to talk about coal today. We know that coal is dirty, unhealthy, uses a lot of water, creates a lot of CO2 emissions. I think we've all agreed that that's not the future. What we're talking about is the future. The future, is it nuclear or photons, atoms or photons? But yeah, thank you for that contribution. But I want to now move on to my next question to our panel, to ask them to elaborate. One thing that I think the nuclear industry in South Africa is not doing any favors for its own cause is the strange bedfellows and fellow travelers that it seems to attract. And I can only just look to the previous nuclear plans. It attracted people like President Zuma, Mr. Zwane, Minister Brown, Minister Van Rooyen, Minister Mkhlobo, Mr. Ben Ngubane, Mr. Brian Molefe, Mr. Anoj Singh, Mr. Machela Koko, and Mr. Maritz. These were the nuclear bedfellows of the nuclear industry. And I want to put it to our panelists. Are these the kind of people that do the industry any good? Or do they reflect poorly on the nuclear sector in South Africa? Mark.
Well, I would add to that list names like Westinghouse, the American nuclear Toshiba-owned company. I would add the French nuclear company. I would add Rosatom, in particular Rosatom, and I would say that the part of what we call the fight back campaign, the campaign by the radical economic transformation faction within the ANC to fight back against our current president, Pravin Gordhan, is tied to the pro-nuclear movement, especially if you read the South African Energy Forum website and Twitter page. And this is the first time ever in public anybody has admitted to being part of that initiative. We've tried to find who actually is prepared to admit that they actually are part of the South African Energy Forum. So I think we cannot diverse this nuclear discussion from the politics of state capture and all that was associated with that, including the meltdown of Eskom and our current energy system. So I think when you look at the renewables program, which is now over 200 billion rands worth of investment, one of the fastest growing renewable energy sectors in the world, and we're going to ramp up that on a massive scale, there's been no incidents of corruption.
Adil, are you happy with the people that are linked to the nuclear sector in South Africa and the nuclear sector globally? Are these the kind of people that you want to be associated with?
You know, the whole nuclear debate and linking individuals is very strange. The last administration has been terribly blamed for things that don't really exist, things which were created in the ether, one. And I'm going to say it very openly because everybody blames Zuma era for nuclear. But nuclear started off in Madiba's time. He was the first one to decommission part of the nuclear programs and made it only electricity generation and gave Cape Town what they're enjoying today, which is electricity generation, under the Kubek station. Madiba was the champion of that. Nobody blames him for that, all right? The nuclear program started off from that point right up to today, led by different administration throughout. President Thabo Mbeki did the same program under the nuclear build program. They even had the PBMR nuclear research facility.
So they canned it all.
Yeah, because of really lack of foresight. They should have continued with PBMR. PBMR today would have been given South Africa the leading position. Now the Chinese have taken it, they are implementing it, they own the technology and they own the entire product process and the value chain. We have lost out on that. There was a massive industrialization scale. People would have been given jobs. South Africa will be at the leading tip edge of it. We've lost that whole competitive edge. So what did we gain except the bickering in the morning around nuclear? Nothing. So we are really not advancing. Instead of we using politics, and I said, we must disassociate bureaucracy from the current technocracy that we want in South Africa. The element of technocracy is lacking in our policy decision making. Had we been visionary enough to see the value of what nuclear could have given to us today, 25 years down the line, had you invested in a simple ordinary 10,000 megawatts nuclear build, South Africa would have been at a European scale level of development.
But it takes 15 years to deliver.
I'm saying 25 years. Had you just given your 10 years to a 10,000 megawatt build, for the last 10 years, you would have had now a South Africa completely transformed, completely changed. People would not be going through a recession today. We would not be having the collapse of markets. We would be having regional security and integrity, and we'll be having energy sovereignty. But the foresight is not there.
Okay. I want to now talk about this politicization of energy that we have seen, which in my view is unfortunate. And this idea, for example, black, coal, nuclear, good, local, versus renewables, wind, solar, imported, white, capital, bad. And is this how it should be? And is it even true? I mean, Rosatom or Arriva or Westinghouse do not make nuclear reactors in South Africa. Of course, some components of wind and solar are not made in South Africa. But it's wrong to me to paint these in terms of nuclear is local and renewables are imported. Or nuclear is black and renewables are white. Can you talk to this politicization issue?
Chris, it's a fact. There's nothing politicized about it. We export, actually, a lot of money when we are currently procuring for the last 6,500 megawatts, 6,800 megawatts of actually procurement on renewables. None of the money landed in South Africa. There was no localization in terms of industries. There was no localizations in terms of build programs. We have even brought in the Spanish people, where you have now a village in the middle of the Karoo right now, of Spanish-speaking people who are not even South African, who are working on some of the wind turbines, who are working on some of the technology on the, solar. And we have a problem.
But there were factories making these turbines.
No, there were no factories making any of these things.
They were making the panels, they closed down.
No, they brought components for installation. The only thing that was done in South Africa was putting up concrete slabs. That was it.
No.
The whole components were brought in and flown in. Money was taken out of South Africa. Government spent 200 billion on this program, has paid to date. Right. No value of it has actually translated. That value, had it been translated, we would have been sitting at the 3 to 4% economic growth if that money stayed in South Africa. That industrialization happened in our shore. Instead, we offshored the entire production, took everything off to Spain, took it to Germany, took it to China.
But I know
and
the factory in Durban that makes panels.
No, there's no
and
factory that makes panels.
That was closed down in Cape Town.
What you're talking about, when we talk about making panels, we're talking about people who are assembling in boxes and putting it and shipping it into a container. That's not making panels.
This is not
the technology is completely different.
Mark,
we're talking about concept to product.
True.
Mark, can you respond?
It's just not true. I mean, if you're going to use populist language, at least get some of your facts right. The reprogram, and I'm not necessarily a big champion of the reprogram, because I think independent power producers are just one set of actors in the future, and they're not the only set of actors to deliver renewables. But it did specify local content at significant levels. So factually, the claims being made here are false. It's true that we could have done a lot better. So if we had ramped up, because we stopped building in 2014, and we've had like this 4 or 5 year lacuna. But going forward to now implement the IRP, if we start ramping up to what it refers to as nearly 3 gigawatts per annum, and actually we need to push that up to 5 through to 2050, that is going to result in a 500 billion rand investment in the end of pipe infrastructures. The upstream industrialization that is going to trigger is going to be several times that. And once you start building renewables, you can't stop. You have to keep on replacing, because they're 20, 25 years down the line. It's a continuous cycle that's going to create around 200,000 jobs by many
Mark,
estimates. So
we're going to stop there. I know there's a lot to say, but time is running out. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to wrap up. Adil, to give your closing statement. And then we're going to take a vote again, just to see if anything has changed.
On the energy landscape, okay, let's get out of the emotions. Let's work on fundamentals. Your energy bedrock is based on 2 elements: your base load, and then the current innovation and technology, which is now quite intermittent. The combination of both needs to work from a South African context. If you want to be an energy planner of any wisdom, you need to be focusing on those 2 elements. What do we do in the current scenario in South Africa today with load shedding? You need to strengthen your base load so that you have your constant power supply, which means your power stations must be refurbished, must be actually be given a new life in terms of new coal-based technology, which is cleaner technology. Secondary to it is you need to be building brand new power plants. Those power plants, you can go in and you can debate it however we want. Whether you're bringing in renewables, you're bringing in coal, you're bringing in solar, you're bringing in nuclear, gas, it does not matter. At the end of the day, the cost is going to be the driver. And at that cost level, what is going to be the barrier? Does South Africa have resources capital? At this stage, the nuclear build program was a sponsored nuclear build program. The Russian says we'll give you R1 trillion. On the basis that the day you start generating electricity, we take back and we share the revenue on the aspect of the electricity tariff. That was the promise. That pledge was made to President Zuma. That pledge was given back to President Ramaphosa. He could have met his investment target. Had he taken that R1 trillion investment, backed it into South Africa, today we would have been having a 3-year preparation for the next 10 years. Industrialization of nuclear built in South Africa, which is the largest build. Better than what we enjoyed in terms of the 2010 economic boom and everything. So that's a kind of thinking that needs to go into the decision making of what needs to build South Africa. Energy is energy. However you see it, you can call it, dirty, you can call it clean. At the end of the day, they're all made from dirty resources. Wind, solar, nuclear, all of them come from materials that are all dirty. At the end of the day, it is what they generate that composites the whole thing.
Thank you.
Our proposition, a quick one, our proposition is to say that we need a distributed energy resources that is based on an equitable basis. What can provide the stable, what can provide the aspect of augmentation, what can provide us the space for innovation. And on those bases, we need to have all of these energy resources utilized in South Africa to make sure that we champion the growth of this country. Instead of being in a recession, we will be moving from a recession to a boom economy.
Mark, over to you. Last 3 minutes.
We have a very, very sophisticated modeling capability in South Africa, in the CSIR, in Eskom, and in a range of other institutions. All of these modeling capabilities agree that you do not need coal and nuclear for baseload. Baseloadism is a techno myth that is invoked by those who want to continue to justify investments in coal and nuclear. If you have a big country like ours, geographically disputed infrastructures, you can solve that problem. On the question of ownership, 52% of all renewable assets in South Africa are owned by South Africans, 32% are owned by black South Africans, but 80-90% of the debt and equity was provided by South Africans. So we have built a local industry, and through tweaks we can massively increase the black ownership of renewable infrastructures. And finally, Russians don't give you 1 trillion rand for nothing. What both ministers of finance, Pravin Gordhan and Nene, refused to do is sign the guarantee that the Russians needed in order to do that. That guarantee would have given the Russians control of the South African economy. Do we want that?
Right, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I've followed and listened to these debates for many years now. And I kind of have crystallized this debate into two sort of discussion points that need to be considered. And it really boils down to, do you, in the economy, do you, the people, the business, industrialists, consumers, do you buy into the premise that renewable energy plus flexible generation equals, and by the way, flexible generation is gas and battery storage. Does wind plus PV plus battery storage plus gas equal stable, reliable, dispatchable, baseload, merit, and peaking capacity? If you do, it is the least cost option. If you do not buy into the fact that wind and solar PV and batteries and gas can deliver this reliable energy, then you need to look at other solutions which may be more expensive, which are more expensive. And you need to decide whether you put your trust in the new world of energy, as most of the world is doing at the moment, or do you not trust that, and that you feel the need as to have backup? And the backup is something that's going to cost more, it's going to use more water, it's going to emit more CO2, and it's not going to give you as many jobs. So you've got to choose. Do you want the one, or do you want the other, or do you want a blend of both to give you a kind of insurance policy? Or do you accept the new world of energy, which is not baseloadism? So you have these two philosophies. The philosophy of baseloadism, which is how the electricity world has been run for the last 100 years. And you have the philosophy of flexible generation, where you have variable, intermittent renewable energy backed up by flexible generation in the form of gas and battery storage, can fill the gaps and the peaks and the troughs and can deliver a reliable future. That's what it boils down to in my analysis. But it's not what I think that counts, it's what you think that counts. You've heard the debates. I want to know from you now, who feels the need to put their insurance in a nuclear future? Can you put your hands up? Who feels the need who feels that renewables plus flexible generation in the form of gas and battery storage can provide the necessary security for the future? Okay, not much has changed after this debate. You are still a one-sided audience, and I thank you. You've heard the arguments. We've had our time. Time is up. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you to your panel. What a delightfully balanced conversation. Excellent. Clearly everyone knows what they want. Very good. Certainly from government we could use hot wind, generate some power. Right, so coming up shortly, an economic panel in this venue.